Welcome to this video. In my opinion, one of the most important transactions in SAP ERP and SAP S/4HANA is the data browser. With this transaction, you can examine the existing data in the database tables more closely. In this video, I would like to present you the tips and tricks around the data browser. Enjoy this video and let's get started. The data browser is a transaction that can be used to display data in database tables. You can search for individual values or data records per table field. The data browser is also called General Table Display in the SAP system. All data in the ERP system is stored in tables. That is why this transaction is so valuable, because it can be used to examine the tables and their contents. The data browser can be executed with the transaction code SE16, as we've seen on the left side, with the transaction code SE16N, as we've seen on the right side, or with the transaction code SE16H. The data browser within a transaction code SE16 is the oldest. Within this transaction code, you can display the content of one specific database table, and here in the field table name there you can enter your database table name. So for example, the echo, it's a table that saves information about purchase orders. Then with this button, table contents, or with the F7 key on your keyboard, you can display the table contents. If there is one maintenance view available, then you can create entries with this button or the F5 key on your keyboard. If you want to, you can also use user parameters. If you've clicked on this, then you can make changes on this. For example, if you would like to change the output list, if you would like to show the keywords in field names or in field labels, or if you would like to use a conversion exit. And with this button, then you will get a nice information and documentation about this transaction. So in here, we would like to display the contents of this table. So because of that, we're clicking on table contents. Then we're reaching the selection field, where we can select for different fields for this table. In my case, I just would like to display the entries or the purchase orders that have been created by my SAP users, so Andreas G. Then I execute a selection. Now I see the two entries in this table echo. If we're moving over to another transaction code for the data browser, it's the SE16N. And in here, we directly see the difference compared to the SE16. It's a newer version. And in here, you directly can enter your table, and you can filter and select directly on this table for a specific column. So for example, if I would like to filter and select again for all the purchase orders that have been created by myself, then under created by, I can again type in my user, in this case Andreas G, and then I execute the selection. Then again I directly see the same output in the ALV grid control I can use to analyze further on. If I want to, I can double click on one entry, then I get into the detail mode as the same as in SE16. I can use a lot more buttons here in the button bar. The third transaction code for data browser is the SE16H. It's the newest version of the data browser, and here you can also use database connections. And for example, if you're using a HANA database, then I would recommend to use this transaction, the SE16H, because here you have a lot of functionalities based on the database connections. If you would like to get to know more about this transaction, SE16H, then you can directly click on this button SAP node to open up this SAP node in your default browser in the SAP Support Help portal. What is also really useful in daily work with the data browser to show the number of entries in a specific database table, because first of all, if you would like to know if there are some entries, for sure you can select your selection and then check whether there are some entries. So for example, if I would type in any user that doesn't exist in this system, then I select the execution, and then down here we are seeing that there are no entries, so no values found. But you can also do another way. You can directly click on number of entries. So once again, I type in any SAP user combination, click on number of entries, and then also no values found. You can also search in the data browser based on other database tables if there are some entries. So for example, for the TSTC, this is a database table that contains information about SAP transaction codes. And if I now click on this button number of entries, then I now see that my SAP system has around or almost 150,000 transaction codes available. And for example, if I open up another database table, for example, DD02L, it's a database table that contains information about SAP tables, and again hit the button number of entries, and then I see there in my SAP system are almost 625,000 tables. So this is really useful. For example, if you would like to search for other tables, there you could use the F4 help with this button or the F4 key on your keyboard, and then search for the different tables. So for example, all the tables that contains the word purchase in the description, and now all the tables are listed in here. In the data browser, you can also use wildcards. So for example, if you would like to search for a specific search term or a specific value in the data browser, then you can use an asterisk or the plus sign. So for example, if you would like to search for different tables starting with the three letters MAR, then you can put an asterisk behind these three letters, and then you can also use the F4 key on your keyboard, and then now you will see all the tables starting with these three letters. If you want to, you can also do it the other way around. For example, you can put an asterisk in front and then also use the F4 help, and now you can see all the tables that have MAR in the table name. Or if you want to, then you can also put a different letter behind. So for example, ending with A and then use the for help, then you will see this kind of search term. So where MAR is in the table name and ending with the letter A. So this is really useful because the asterisk sign stands for multiple characters. So this is really useful if you're not sure what the exact table name is, and for sure you can do the exact same. So for example, if you know that a SAP user starting with a specific term, and then you can also put the asterisk behind and then execute a selection, and now we can see here we have just two purchase orders with Andreas G, but I would, for example, also have selected for purchase order with Andreas G2 and so on. So this is really useful for your daily work within the data browser. And another character for searching within the data browser is the plus sign. So for example, if we are not sure what a specific letter or character in the database table is, then we can use the plus sign, and it stands for one universal character. So here, for example, we know that a table starting with EK, then one universal character, and then ending with O, and then we use the F4 key on our keyboard, then we see these three tables, the EGVO, the ECHO, and the EGPO. And we could have also done the exact same down here for the created by. So for example, if I know that the SAP user start with Andreas and I don't know the last letter or last character, then also could use this one, then execute the selection. But first of all, I have to type in the exact database tables. So in this case, it's the echo, and then execute the selection. Then we get the exact same result as we have seen earlier. And keep in mind that compared to the asterisk sign, the plus sign stands for one specific but universal character, and there has to be one character. So for example, if I would, for example, use this one with the plus, then execute the selection, then we don't get any result because the system thinks that there has to be one character in behind. But if we would, for example, use the asterisk in behind and then execute the selection, then this works because it also stands for no character. By default, within the data browser, there you see in the column output all the columns and attributes that are shown in the ALV grid control in the output. And by default, all the columns are selected. If you want to disable and make some columns invisible, then you just have to click on this checkbox so that it is not selected, and just all the columns that are selected will show up in the output. So for example, if I would deselect those attributes and again under created by enter my SAP user and execute the selection, then for example here we don't see the company code anymore. And if you would like to just show one specific column, then first of all you can just deselect all the columns, but a faster and nicer way is to use the menu function edit selection function and then deselect all, or you can also use the key combination shift and F6. And now what we have seen that all the columns in the output column have been deselected. And for example, if you just would like to show the purchase order number and the company code, then we can execute selection once again, and there we just see those two columns. The column option is also really important because if you click on the button option in one specific attribute. So for example, for the created by, then we directly see multiple options. You can choose one option, for example, by double clicking or click on one of those and then click on this continue button or hit the enter key on your keyboard. And within here, you have a lot of options that you can use in order to select for one specific attribute. So for example, if we just want to not select one specific value, then we could just use this option, double click on this one, and then we directly see that this icon has changed. And then, for example, if I would type in this as a P user, then we can see that all the purchase orders are selected that are not created by this SAP user. We can change the option right afterwards if we click again onto this option and, for example, double click on this one, and here we are seeing now that also the icon has changed to it's negative equal to, so it has the same result as we've seen earlier, that also not equal to this SAP user. So this is really useful. You can also set a greater than, a less than, a greater than equal to, and so on to select ranges. So this is really useful in your daily work. Within the data browser, you can also open up the details. To do this, first of all, you can just double click on one entry and then you will see the details of this entry. You can also select this entry and then click on this button details to analyze those details briefly. And again, with double click, we see this detail window. And what is nice in this window, that we directly see the field name, that we are seeing the technical field name, and that we are seeing the converted value and the unconverted value. Because, for example, for the order units, it could be that it is different because you have an external unit, external format, and an internal format. Within the data browser, you can also change the technical settings. Under the menu function extras, change settings, or also executable with the key combination Control F12, you open up this window and there you have a lot of technical settings that you can set up or maybe change. So just to highlight one, you can show the technical name as column heading. You can make the key columns scrollable. You can output without conversion exit. You can save last layout automatically, and so on. So have a look into this, and there you can make a lot of changes in the technical settings. In the data browser, you can make directly changes in the database table, but just do these steps and tasks I will show you right now if you are 100% sure what you're doing, because there you are making changes directly in the database tables and there is no validation, there are no checks included. You can screw up the whole total SAP system. So please only do those steps if you are 100% what you are doing and you're doing this on your own risk. But basically you can do this if you opened up a specific table and then you're using the shortcut /H in the command field, and once you've hit the enter key on your keyboard, then we're seeing that now the debugging is switched on, because we have to set two SAP variables in the debugging to X to activate the change mode. And then you can directly hit the F8 key on your keyboard or click on this online button to start the ABAP debugger. And right now in here we have to change two variables. So the first one is the gd minus edit, and the second one is the gd minus sub edit. It doesn't matter if you're typing those variables in lower letters, doesn't matter. I personally write them with capital letters. And here you can click on this changed field content button, and then you set it to a capital letter X. You're doing the exact same to this one, and then you can just continue in the ABAP debugger by clicking on this button, or you could also hit the F8 key on your keyboard. And then we're directly seeing that more buttons are available. So for example, you can append a row, you can insert a row, you can delete a row, and you can duplicate a row. And here right now we would like to change the short text. So for example, in here we just would like it to change it to ERP up, hit enter, and then we click on this save button. And here we're directly seeing some kind of change log. So how many rows I have deleted, inserted, and changed. And if, for example, you would like to insert an entry that already exists based on the primary key, then you can't save it. So this check is still included, but there are no validations if this input is valid or not. So please keep in mind to make changes directly on a database table. You can, if you want to, also open up the transaction code SE16 and make changes in there. But for this, I'm copying this purchase order number and open up the SE16. Again, the table EKPO, the EKPO for the purchase order line items. Click on table contents, and then I would like to again select on this purchase order, execute this, and here we're right now seeing the output in the ALV grid control. And to make changes directly in the data browser, you have to use another layout, and you can change it under settings and user parameters. So the tab data browser will open up, and there, as mentioned, the ALV grid control display is currently selected. You have to change it to the SE16 standard list, and then you have to continue directly the output changes, and then you have to double click on one entry, and then you have also to start the ABAP debugger. So again, we're using the /H command, and then now the debugging is switched on, and then just directly hit the enter key on your keyboard, and then again the debugger will start. And now we have to change this code variable, so you can double click on this one, or you can type it manually if you want to, and there we have to change it from show up to, for example, edit. If you want to, you can also directly delete it. You insert a new, so you have to, for example, change it to this value to insert a new entry. You have to use this one if you would like to append it. If you would like to delete it, then you have to use this value. But now we would like to edit it. So again, we click on this button, and there we directly see that now this entry is ready for being edited. And now I would like to change it to ERP up SE16, for example, and then I click on the save button. And now we see that the database record successfully created. If we are going one step back and again refresh this output, then we will see exactly this result of this change. Now we've made changes directly in the data browser, and be sure that those changes are logged and can be analyzed from auditing perspective. So to display those changes, you can use extras and then display change documents in the data browser, in this case SE16N, and then this report will show up. And in here, for example, under username, there I type in my SAP username, and then if you want to, you can add more selection criteria, but for me this is fine. Then I click on this execute button, and here we are seeing directly what kind of changes I have made. So in this case, I made this change in this table. Some at earlier days, I have also made changes over there. And if you want to, you can also open up this change log in the transaction code SA38 in the ABAP program execution, and in there you have to type in and use an ABAP report called SE16N underscore CD underscore display. And once again, SE16N underscore CD underscore display. So this one, and once you've executed this report, then you will end up at this exact same selection screen. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that you have enjoyed this video and learned a lot about the data browsers or the transaction code SE16, SE16N, and SE16H. Hit the like button, add a comment, and subscribe for free, and then see you in the next video.